another story that I think illustrates this use of cognitive surplus. In Kenya, in December of 2007, at the end of that year, there was a disputed presidential election. And in the aftermath of the election, there was an outbreak of ethnic violence. Oracle, a lawyer in Nairobi, was blogging about this at her blog called Kenyan Pundit. And it was one of many places where people were discussing with some great anguish what was going on in Kenya. And then, in the middle of this discussion, the Kenyan government suddenly imposed a very stringent media blackout. And all of a sudden, weblogs like Acola's moved from being a place where society was having this discussion to one of the sole sources of news left that was continuing to operate in light of the media blackout. So Acola began to solicit reports from her readers to describe where they were seeing outbreaks of violence and so forth. And there was so much material pouring in that she said, I can't keep up. I could do this round the clock all day, day in and day out. And I still couldn't publish everything that my readers are telling me about these outbreaks of violence. If only there was a way to automate this. Two programmers held up their hands in the comments on her blog and said, we can build that. And 3 days later, they launched what became Ushahidi. The name means witness or testimony in Swahili. And it is simply a way of taking what society knows as a whole, where is the violence, aggregating it and manifesting it on a map. It takes reports from email, from the web, critically from SMS, from mobile phones, and turns it into something you can see on a map. Right? And they produced the only significant overview of where the violence was in Kenya. It was not done by the media, it was not done by the government, it was done by a handful of volunteers working off the weblog. It's worked well enough that the people who created this system said, we're going to turn this into a platform, we're going to make this adoptable by other people facing crisis mapping problems, as the phrase has become. And since then, Ushahidi has been used in Mexico to track the risk of electoral fraud. It's been used in Washington, D.C. to track snow removal, first world problems. It's been used most famously to track both the need for and sources of supplies in the aftermath of the Port-au-Prince earthquake in Haiti. And if you look at the front page of Ushahidi, you will see that it has gone from its East African origin to become deployed worldwide in less than 3 years. Right? This is a story of invention by a particular group of people in Nairobi in their moment of need that has turned into a platform that's generally adopted. So, what Oracola did would not have been possible without digital technology. What Oracola did would not have been possible without human generosity. Right? And what made Ushahidi what it is that both of those statements are true. So this book is a bit of a volte-face for me. I was in the 90s, alas for me, a techno-determinist, which is to say when I saw a situation to which a new technology had been added and new behaviors happened, I said, oh, the technology's caused the behaviors. Right? What I came to realize in the course of doing this book is that behavior is motivation filtered through opportunity. And that when you put a new opportunity in place, as new technology creates new opportunity, you still have to look to the human motivations to explain why these things are happening. And so what we can see in the Ushahidi story is that this new opportunity actually allowed for a desire for generosity, a desire to be autonomous, a desire to be competent, a desire to share, to express themselves now on a global scale, right? To express themselves in a place in the media landscape that they'd been previously locked in. And this is the cognitive surplus at work. This is the idea of taking surplus time and talents and harnessing it communally in order to create these kinds of values. So using cognitive surplus, we can now start to see the expansion and expression of projects of incredible and significant creative, literary, artistic, political, and scientific value. We also get, I think as is obvious, lots and lots of lolcats. Lolcats are cute pictures of cats made cuter with the addition of cute captions. The ideal effect of cat plus caption being to make the reader laugh out loud, putting the lol in lolcats. And this is also an output of the collaborative, of the cognitive surplus, which is to say this is just as surely an experimental and playful use of people's free time as ushahidi is. Right? So let us stipulate, as the lawyers say, that making a lolcat is the stupidest possible creative act. Right? Now, there are other candidates, God knows, but lolcats will do as a general case. But here's the thing. Even the stupidest possible creative act is still a creative act, which is to say there's a spectrum between mediocrity and excellence, and people can move up and down that spectrum, often with some difficulty, and often they don't choose to, but they are at least on the spectrum. Right? The gap, the gulf, is between doing nothing and doing something. And someone who's made even one lolcat and uploaded it to do nothing more than amuse someone else has already crossed that gap. Right? Now it's tempting to want ushahidi without the lolcat, to say if only this were a network that only produced high-minded, socially valuable, civically engaged kinds of work, and not silly throwaway stuff for people on their lunch hours. But that doesn't happen in part because freedom to experiment means freedom to experiment full stop, right? If you give people the ability to do as they like, some of what they like is this. But more to the point, on the historical canvas, that has always been the case, right? Even in this temple of the sacred printing press, right? We got erotic novels, first crack on the box. Albus Manutius sets up shop in Venice, and here comes the smoke. Scientific journals took another 150 years to appear. So we get the silly stuff right away because it's the stuff everybody knows how to do. It is the civically engaged stuff that takes longer. And this is really the last third of the book, is talking about the culture that can form around media to make the difference between the stuff you essentially get for free and the stuff that requires civic engagement. So here's a kind of an illustration of this. This is a picture of an alchemist's laboratory. It's a little dark. I apologize for not being able to see it well. And a chemist's laboratory. Spot the difference? No, of course not. Alchemists and chemists, right, at the border of alchemy and chemistry, alchemists and chemists used the same equipment. They all had braziers, they all had scales, they all had vials. Right? They had the same materials, they had the same techniques. In many cases, they were the same people. Many chemists had been alchemists and changed. Right? So if it wasn't a technical revolution, and it wasn't a change in population, what was it? It was this. It was a change in the culture around the printing press. In the 1640s, in this town, a group of people got together, natural philosophers, we call them scientists now, and they committed themselves to a fairly remarkable idea. They decided they weren't going to believe things that weren't true. Right? Now, this is hard work, right? Human beings are not well provisioned with the ability to subject our own ideas to the kind of withering scrutiny that would root out error. It's just not our long suit. We are, however, provisioned with a related skill, which is we're very good at subjecting other people's ideas to withering scrutiny. So what the scientists did, what the natural philosophers who became the first chemists did, was to say, we are inventing a social norm of publication. Right? And their motto was, nothing from mere words. If you tell me that you've done something, I do not believe you until you have published your results, and you've published them in a way that I can recreate the experiment and see what you were talking about. The chemists rather criticized the alchemists terribly, right? Robert Hooke goes ballistic on the subject of the alchemists, not for failing, but for failing uninformatively. So you have to hold these two thoughts together. The scientific revolution would not have been possible without the printing press. The printing press did not cause the scientific revolution. And the thing in the gap between those two statements is the cultural norms that were built around the medium that led to this transition.